Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another DM's Guild review, my written and video review series where I take a look at the adventures and supplemental material at the Dungeon Masters Guild website. With this video, I'll be reviewing the DM's Guild adventure The Starlight Relic, designed by Ashley Warren for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. A review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. If you enjoy my videos, consider supporting me via patreon.com/roguewatson. Personal shout out to my platinum patrons Andrew and Brian, and gold patron RPG Papercrafts. Let us flip now over to the Starlight Relic. There I am. The Starlight Relic is a forest woodlands adventure designed for a party of PCs of about level 7, so pretty solidly tier 2. And it is a build as a one-shot, although it's always tricky to tell how long it's going to be, and there are obviously ways to make it a lot longer, but it is a self-contained complete story, even though it is listed on the DM's Guild as being part of a series called A Requiem of Wings, which is Ashley's ongoing series within, I think it's her own world. I don't actually know if these takes place in the Forgotten Realms or not. It uses obviously Forgotten Realms lore and things, but in its own like region of the world. You don't necessarily have to play those first two. I have not. I did review a previous adventure that took place in the region that was the Executioner's Daughter, but it doesn't have to do with this specific storyline. But in any case, you don't necessarily have to play those adventures in order to understand or play this one. And in fact, there's a level jump between those adventures and this one. It even states that. So this is very self-contained. Don't have to worry about playing the whole series. I really like this adventure. It has a really, really good mix and a good balance of puzzles and social encounters and combat encounters, as well as a lot of fun NPCs to work with. So we're going to jump in and take a look at the Starlight Relic. It is divided into several scenes, 5 scenes, and unfortunately there aren't really any maps included in this adventure, but everything else is fantastic. So the PCs are summoned to the city of Magra with a mission to locate this titular relic, the Starlight Relic. And the relic is a candle with magical properties that repels both demons and angels. So this city is kind of in the middle of this war zone between celestials and demons, that kind of classic that's like the setting of the Diablo universe, is just constant angels and demons warring each other, and that's obviously isn't the first thing to use that and won't be the last, but that's kind of the backdrop that's involved here. And this candle has the ability to repel both of those beings by either expelling like pure light or just pure darkness. So a very powerful artifact to have for the people of this region. And this Velo woman, who is a woodworker, musician, generally just kind of a nice person, really just wants this relic to broker a peace, or at least try and have like Magra remain like a neutral place, because now they have this powerful item that can take care of, like, protect them from both beings. So that's kind of a nice twist to have on there. The beginning of the adventure is mainly just social encounters. There is actually one map included. Oddly, it is the least necessary map in this adventure, which is just a map of the marketplace of this city. But the players are free to shop around and buy some gear if they want. There's a lot of nice flavor here where you can specifically buy things that this city produces, as well as actually talk to merchants who have a few sentences in the appendix about their kind of personality and who they are. So that's a nice bit to add to the flavor. Kind of depending on if your PCs like that kind of thing, if they want to mingle or do that, or if they just want to skip all that and immediately go to the NPC with the yellow exclamation point above their head. There is a nice bit here for scaling difficulties, and it does mention if your party is less than 4, you should probably have level 8 PCs, whereas parties of 4 would be fine with level 7. But there is an additional table for more random encounters, basically the way you can make the adventure easier or more difficult is either by taking away encounters or adding more encounters. So it's a pretty simple job there. But they meet with Vela, and Vela has acquired a song, which is the Song of the Starlight, which is actually a very well-written, nice little song here, which, of course, if I were running this adventure, I would absolutely sing in my best, Frodo and the Nine Fingers, the whole, Tolkien loved his fucking songs, if I actually read those books. And it's very cool, it's written very well, but it's not just flavor text. This is actually used in the adventure in some really cool ways, which is probably my favorite aspect of this adventure. It teases the boss fight at the end. The last lines say, "For should my temple incur your scorn, a beast will rise with heads and teeth." That's fantastic, because it teases the final boss fight, but it's also used in the puzzle in actually getting to the temple. People have to recall this song, so it's used in a really cool way. So the song kind of points the way towards a certain like copse of trees, and you follow the river, and basically has the way to this temple supposedly containing this relic, or so Vela thinks. And obviously she's not an adventurer, so she just wants to hire some adventurers to go do that. And then scene 2 adds a bit of a wrinkle, and there's this another character called Siro, what's her last name? Harissa, who is apparently related to a character from the previous adventure. So that's kind of the expanded cinematic universe of these adventures, is that this is a sister of a character from those previous things. Again, I have not looked at those adventures. Obviously, I haven't reviewed them or anything like that, so I can't speak to any of that. But it does seem like a cool nod if you have been following these releases, this Requiem of Wings series. But she is a warlock who pretends to be basically a Fey, Archfey warlock, and is really just interested in the way to the temple. She has acquired a map, supposedly bestowed upon her by her patron, and she just wants to go to the relic, and realizes the PCs are going there, and she's like, well, safety in numbers, let me tag along. And obviously most PCs are going to be, and there's an insight check they can roll to hint, that she's got some ulterior motives. Every PC is going to be, immediately suspicious of any kind of character like that, especially a warlock. But luckily, it is written that if the PCs do turn her down, then she ends up just following them anyway. She just won't obviously help them in the battles to come, but I think she's a really interesting character because she is a secret celestial warlock, which is a cool nod to, I believe that was added in Xanathar's as a new warlock, or maybe it was an Unearthed Arcana first, but it was added as a new patron for warlocks, as they can just have like basically an angel kind of patron. And in this case, it's a Solar known as the Harbinger, which is freaking awesome. And she does want the relic, in fact, and obviously she wants it to give to her side of the Celestials, which is a cool twist because, a lot of times when an NPC has a hidden motive, it's usually as to betray the PCs at some point in a hostile fashion. In this case, it is kind of a betrayal of her motives in that she is interested in the relic, but I think a lot of lawful good or paladins or clerics would see like, well, yeah, we want the Celestials to win. Like, that's a good thing, right? So that creates an interesting conflict of, she has an ulterior motive, but maybe the players would actually agree with that motive. Interesting to think about. So, the journeying into the woods, the first thing they meet is a woodcutter, a friendly dwarven woodcutter who can share with them the key to using Deathic runes. And I'm not at all familiar with this. I'm not super well versed in Forgotten Realms lore. If you've watched any of my videos, I have to make that concession pretty much every time. Eventually I will learn something between all these adventures and running my own campaign. But this is a thing that exists in the Forgotten Realms, and it is just a cool, like you see the key right here. It's just letters with different shapes, and she, I think, gives the players the key right then and there. Drez will show the characters a key used by the woodcutters who don't have dwarven heritage. Reading the runes aloud makes the marked trees glow, providing a useful visual trail of breadcrumbs. The tree will stop glowing when the rune is repeated. So it literally just turns on these certain glowing... the trees will glow if they have these certain runes on them. And the reason that matters is because in the appendix, the players will realize that at some point the trees have the lyrics to the song as these runes inscribed on the tree. So they will literally light the path by just reciting the song. And then the appropriate trees will light up, which I think is a really cool puzzle and a really cool way of implementing the song into the adventure in an actual mechanical way, as well as just providing a neat puzzle that basically anybody can solve, but that is still like satisfying to engage with. It's very tricky when you have a lot of mind-teasing puzzles, like, and some of your players may enjoy that, others will not, but if they get stuck, then it's like, well, okay, just roll the investigation check. And this has that as a fail-safe, but I really think this is one of those puzzles that really anybody can do and accomplish and feel good about doing it. So I really like that aspect of it. And that's kind of just throughout as they go along. They use the marked trees. But there should be some combat encounters. The forest, is in a fantasy world, and you can't have a forest in a fantasy world without monsters. It's just, you just can't. And it depends. It actually diverges somewhat depending on if the players take Siro or if they don't. If they don't, then they're basically just following the song lyrics based on the one that Vela gave them, and she suggested that they follow this river, and the river will take them to a combat encounter with a pair of displacer beasts, as well as an encounter with some will-o-wisps. And I don't think either of these are particularly, difficult. And again, we're talking about level 7 PCs, but they should be decently enough enjoyable, and they're designed to kind of slow down. All of D&D is that way. It's just taking up the party's resources for when they get to the actual fights later on, to where by the time they get to like that boss fight, they're not at full strength. That's kind of the point. So certainly would not allow any long rests in this adventure. Maybe get a short rest in during the forest, which is kind of what short rests are designed for. If they follow Siro's map, if they are actually with her, and there is a bit on there where like only Siro can read the map, so they can't just like steal her map or something. They have to have her actually there to follow the map. But it's much less dangerous for them. They actually have what looks like just a social encounter with a fairy dragon who kind of helps them like point out the Deathic runes, lighting up the certain words of the song, so it's just kind of helpful. And the other thing is they can encounter a bunch of violet fungus, which I have used violet fungus previously, I believe in the Prince of the Apocalypse campaign. Those are kind of neat to have, just these little hostile mushrooms that can actually attack. I believe they just straight up can attack enemies. They only move like 5 feet or something, but just kind of a fun encounter there. There are additional random encounters. There's a D10 provided, which is nice. None of them are really given like paragraphs of information about it, so it's not like a full-on chart of things to add. But it is, the one interesting note is that some of them are hostile or not, which like a giant wolf spider was not hostile. Okay, Myconid sprout is not hostile, or they could encounter dwergers. I'm not sure why they encounter dwergers in the forest. Ettercap, werebore, a green hag. So again, that's really just if your players, you're either looking to expand this forest out longer, or they really want to have another combat, or maybe you're like, oh man, that fight, for whatever happened, like I just couldn't roll worth shit, and this fight didn't drain the party like I was hoping to, so let me unleash a werebore on them instead or something. But it's nice to have. It's not like a big deal, but it is nice to have this on here. And then they have to solve the puzzle, as I mentioned before. There is, I believe, an investigation check involved in case they don't. But okay, well, that's insight check on Siro. But in any case, the point is they follow this really interesting puzzle. The perception check, they can spot mark trees too. And there's a thing at the end which I'll show. I don't want to scroll back and forth through the PDF here, but there's a really interesting handout that's offered. If you're playing physical D&D, I do not, but that's nice to have here. For the actual runes with the letters underneath, and the correct ones that the player should be spelling out is all provided in a handout, which is good. The fourth scene is the temple itself, which is unfortunately not mapped at all, which is a large bummer. I love my maps, and I hate not having maps. And it's very strange that the only map provided in here was the marketplace, which is not needed at all, whereas you do need, like, a forest map would be nice. It's not necessary for random encounters. I get that, for a lot of published adventures, but it's nice to have. But for this, which is actually a very, very tiny dungeon, it's not really a full dungeon at all. Very, very tiny, like small 3-room dungeon. But still, it'd be nice to have a map for that. No map, but there is a nice little adventure game-esque puzzle right outside where there's a bunch of trees that kind of just block the path completely, cannot be penetrated by might or magic, or climbed over or under. And if you're given 4 items in front: an axe, a tinderbox, a clay bowl, and a marble tray. And you have to figure out how to manipulate these items. And obviously if you take the axe or the tinderbox and try to damage the trees, and the trees will damage you back, so you quickly figure out that's probably not the way to do it. Whereas you should be doing something nice to the trees, which is you scoop water and pour it on the tree with the bowl. Or what is you do the religion check, and offering trays. You offer flowers or coins in the tray, so that will also open. So you should be nice to trees, and trees will let you in. That's the moral of the story. The temple ruins itself, again, it's just basically 3 rooms. You've got the sacrificial room, which has a pair of ghouls in there. Again, just kind of to drain the party's resources. I don't think a pair of ghouls would do anything to a party of level 7s, but hey, it's there. And then the priest chamber just has loot, which is interesting that you get basically a lot of the good loot before the boss fight. You get a robe of stars and an instrument of the bards, which is good, although probably useless unless you have somebody that's taking that is a bard. I think I'm not actually sure if those can be only attuned by bards. I'd have to check on that. I would assume that would be the case. Maybe it just requires proficiency in instruments though, because I think that doesn't have to be bard specific. The final room is the main chamber, which has this stone pillar in a pond. And if you get basically close to it, the ground trembles, and this Hydra emerges from the pond, which is actually like 30 feet deep or something crazy. Certainly not expecting that. So then that is the teasing of the teeth and jaws and whatnot from the song. So it's a big boss fight of a Hydra, which is pretty cool, and I think that's a fairly appropriate CR level. I want to say Hydra, just off the top of my head, like a 7 or something, so I think that's pretty appropriate for the party, and also considering, again, they have not long rested since fighting what has probably amounted to 2 or 3 random encounters on the way, so that should be a pretty fun little boss fight at the end, especially since the players won't be able to sneak up or plan in any way. It's just kind of the surprise boss fight, which is nice. Once they defeat the Hydra, they have one last challenge to overcome, and that is the fact that Siro wants that relic for herself. And the adventure provides several options, which is nice, in that you can just say, yeah, okay, you can have it. I go Team Angel and just give her up. Now, remember, the party was specifically given a mission to get this item for Vela. So if they just give the relic to Sira, then they go back to Vela empty-handed, so they're not getting nearly the reward. By the way, the reward, I skipped over that, was 1,000 gold pieces, and she can enchant an item for every single player, which is here on the right side of the screen. You can see she will enchant just a wooden object to give it a plus to a skill, which is a really cool reward. It's not like handing out these powerful magic items, but it is still a nice thing to have, and it's kind of again, and Ashley did this with the Executioner's Daughter, whereas you get an item that reminds you of that adventure. You don't just get I mean, there are that robe of stars and whatever. There are included DMG items in the adventure, but I like the fact that one-shot adventures can reward at least one specific item for the players, not only as a cool item, but as just like a token, a memory, a memento of that adventure. I really like that concept, and I think this one is really fun because I don't ever see this. I don't ever see an item that literally gives a boost to a skill. It's always something combat related, or some kind of spell that it can cast or something of that nature, or potion effect, but nothing that just straight up boosts a skill if you're holding this item. I think that's really, really interesting and cool, but only if they return it to Vela and the players. I think she says that she would give them something, some kind of small magical token. So that's pragmatic characters maybe like, well, we'll get a reward from here, but they do get a reward from Sira if they give it to her, which is this amulet of the Arium, which I think it's the Arium, and I forgot what the other one's called. Those are the two sides of the angel-demon fight. It's a +3 to AC amulet, which is pretty significant, although it's just for one PC. So they have the option of negotiating with her. They just talk her down, or they can just grab the relic and immediately use it to repel her, because since she's a celestial warlock, she would be repelled by the relic. Or they can just fight her, and she'll actually have some loot on her, which is listed here. I'd really like that these options are spelled out and detailed here, and given actual bullet points of here's how you can talk her down. Here is the loot on her body, here, or they can just give it to her, or I like that those options are there, and it really helps DMs not be left up in the air about, okay, and there's not just a sentence that says, oh, well, Siro wants the relic too, and they have to deal with it. It's actually broken down here in a nice half page of information, which makes for a really fun epilogue here, basically. And then the conclusion is the players return to Vela, and either they bring her the Starlight or they don't, if they actually gave it to Sira. Obviously, if they don't, then they only get a couple hundred GP, although Vela's not actually angry, because the players can just basically lie to her and say, we didn't find it, you were wrong. She's like, oh, okay, well, here's some money for your trouble. But if they do, then they get a pretty nice reward here of 1,000 gold pieces. So I like the adventure here. I'm going to skip down. Well, no, skip. It's right here. There's a nice, I guess it's not called an appendix, but it's basically an appendix of the stat blocks. There aren't any new monsters, although Siro is given her own stat block because she can accompany the party as a kind of a party NPC. And she is a holy crap, she's an 11th level spellcaster. My goodness, that's pretty high. She doesn't have spells listed, which is odd. Although she is a healing, a celestial warlock, so she's got the healing abilities and the stats for that. Although her stats are kind of unremarkable, except for her awesome charisma. Oddly, kind of missing spell list though. I don't know how much you're actually supposed to use her. That's really up to DMs. Some DMs will love having the chance to use a party NPC in battle, and others would basically just almost ignore her except for social encounters. So maybe you don't need it. Although remember, at the end you could even fight her, or in some ways maybe there'll be like a charisma insight check, in which case you would need to have those kind of stat blocks for her for sure. But I like that also that's included just for like the merchants in Magra, that if the players are really keen on hanging out and shopping for a while and just kind of eating up that time, but having fun doing it, then there's a few sentences listed for just the various merchants around, which is nice to have. It's kind of a bonus here. Obviously, the good ones, the main NPCs are Vela, Drez, which is that dwarven woodcutter, and Sira. And there's a couple notable bits of information here for DMs to know, which is good. And then, let's see, I guess it's after the actual credits. Okay, here we go. So you get two nice handouts. You get the actual letter, which is the inciting incident, the hook that brings the players to Vela to start off the mission, the entire mission. So it's nice that you actually have this as a physical handout that you can that you can use, and this cool printout of the marked tree runes. So this is a list of the runes that can be found on the marked trees that they have to translate. All they see is the top part, and then you're just supposed to fold. If you're using again physical, you literally just fold or cut, whatever you want to do. But you give them the top half. They have to translate it using that key that they learned from the dwarven woman. And then you just fit it. And it's not a challenging puzzle, but it's still fun because you're still sitting there doing that kind of, I want to say busy work, but that's, you're sitting there like, oh, this is this, using that kind of cipher. It's that scene from A Christmas Story. You're like, oh, drink more Ovaltine. That's a fun thing to do, is you look through that key. I like that concept. That's fun. And I really like the way it's tied into the song as well, that song is actually relevant. So hopefully your players are not just rolling their eyes when you're telling the song. And I would actually, I wish the song was a handout too, and I don't think it is now, because that needs to be that needs to be information like pasted, copy and pasted, or given to your players in some way so they can go back and recall like the actual words, because those do matter quite a bit. So I really like the way that's used. I just like this adventure in general. I think it does a really good job of giving you a firm, beginning, middle, and end. There's a fun boss fight. There's a good. I like the friendly NPCs that can join you. I like the kind of twist at the end with Sira. All of that is good stuff. So let's go over my quick pros and cons and final verdict for, let's see, trying to get to the right spot, for the Starlight Relic. So pro, the Song of the Starlight is cleverly used to tease future events, and it really provides a good framework for the entire latter half of the Forest Journey, which is figuring out the runes kind of lead you to the right path to find the temple. That's a really neat thing. And the runic alphabet puzzle that's used to solve the song, and I like that the adventure includes the printable handouts there. The appendix includes notes on major NPCs of the adventure, from a few sentences to several paragraphs, depending on the NPC's importance. I like that. There's a table for additional random encounters. And I also like that the reward at the end from Vela is just a really cool enchanted, it's a minor item, but it's still a neat thing. You get this little enchanted object that can boost a skill, which is just a neat way to remember the adventure. My only con is that the adventure lacks maps, and it's not a super map heavy adventure. It doesn't have like a big dungeon crawl or anything, so it's not as egregious as others, but there is that temple area especially I would like to see mapped in regards to how the layout works and like where the Hydra is compared to the room, and like that kind of information is nice to have. So at the very least, I would have liked to see a temple map. Forest maps would be nice. Would have been a nice bonus to have, but maybe not entirely necessary, because you could just use any kind of generic forest battle map for that. But the temple is really kind of lacking here, which is a bummer. So my final verdict, the Starlight Relic is a well-balanced, well-written adventure with an intriguing story and an excellent mix of role-playing and puzzles and combat. Very, very good stuff. So thank you to everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can support my work at patreon.com/roguewatson. You can follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel. Thank you.